10 years ago, I remarried a man named Thomas. Thomas had a daughter named Emma. Emma never warmed up to me and continued to hurl insults at me even as an adult. One day, Thomas told me that Emma was getting married to the son of a hospital director. When I attended the ceremony, Emma brushed me off completely.
You're not needed in my life. You're a disgrace to my family, so don't get involved with me anymore, okay?
Understood. I gave a short reply and quickly left the dressing room. An hour after I returned home, Emma kept calling me persistently.
Dad got really mad at me. And by the way, I heard you're acquainted with Kevin, the groom?
Yes, that's right, I answered calmly, and Emma raised her voice.
Why didn't you tell me that?
Do I owe an explanation to someone who only invited my husband?
Anyway, if you don't come back, the wedding can't start. Please, I'm begging you, come back.
Well, I suppose I have no choice. Fine, I'll come. After hanging up the phone, I smirked to myself. You dared to anger me. Don't think you'll get away with it so easily. My name is Sarah, a 50-year-old homemaker. I've been married to my husband, Thomas, for 10 years. I first got married when I was 23. However, 2 years later, I found out my husband had been cheating on me with his college girlfriend. I divorced him immediately and was so heartbroken that I swore off romance altogether. But later, at a mutual friend's gathering, I met Thomas. His gentle nature was evident in his demeanor, and I felt an instant connection. We shared the same interests in reading, art, and movies, which made our conversations lively and enjoyable. Apparently, Thomas felt the same way, as he invited me to an art exhibit on our way home that evening. After going out a few times, we began dating seriously. It was during this time that Thomas hesitantly confessed something.
To be honest, I have a daughter in middle school from my previous marriage.
I knew Thomas was divorced, but I was surprised to hear he had a grown child. At the same time, I felt a bit happy, thinking how someone my age, unlikely to have children of my own, might get to have a daughter. The reason for the divorce, I heard, was his ex-wife's reckless spending and neglectful parenting. The girl on his phone wallpaper, Emma, was so cute she looked like she could be a model or an idol. Well then, I'll need to get along with your daughter, Emma, first. From the next date, we started going out as a trio. Thomas, Emma, and I went to theme parks and shopping, building a relationship. With big eyes, long lashes, a well-shaped nose, and a great figure, Emma was even more beautiful in person than in photos.
Sarah, please take care of Dad.
Her cheerful smile made me feel truly happy. A year later, seeing that Emma and I seemed to get along well, Thomas proposed to me, and we decided to get married. At first, everything was smooth and harmonious between us. But about 3 months in, the atmosphere began to change. Emma dropped her act and started showing her rough, true colors. Thomas's calm personality clashed with Emma's fiery temperament. Since her early years, the two often butted heads, but Thomas would either give in or patiently talk things through, so major fights were avoided. Thomas even considered canceling our marriage if Emma objected, but since she seemed to like me, he decided to go forward. That turned out to be a big mistake. I heard she was a top student at school, so this must have been her way of letting off steam. At home, she was always in a bad mood, lashing out at objects and hurling insults at both Thomas and me.
Here you go, Emma. Hot chocolate for you. And here's your latte, Sarah.
Thanks. On our way back from shopping, Thomas stopped at a cafe, as Emma requested, and brought back drinks. But as soon as she took a sip from the cup Thomas handed her, she screeched.
Hey, I ordered hot chocolate, and this is white chocolate.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry. I'll get it right next time.
Thomas apologized, looking genuinely sorry, but Emma glared and lashed out in anger.
Can't you even get a simple order right, Dad? You're such a failure.
I quickly stepped between the two. Emma, don't talk like that. Everyone makes mistakes, you know.
I'm talking to Dad. Stay out of it, stranger.
The word stranger struck a painful chord in me. Her resentment wasn't just directed at Thomas. It was mostly aimed at me. One day, Emma came home from middle school and found me in the kitchen kneading ground meat. Her mood instantly soured.
I wanted pasta today. Why are you making hamburgers?
Oh, really? I'm sorry. I'll make pasta tomorrow. She slammed her school bag on the floor and yelled like a child.
We're family, and you don't even know what I want? You act all high and mighty pretending to be a mom, but you're just a useless old lady.
Since I knew she wasn't comfortable calling me Mom, I had told her to use my name. But instead, Emma called me things like old lady. How could I have known? You should have told me this morning.
Are you stupid? What I want to eat changes from morning to now.
Emma became even more furious. She grabbed a cup of instant noodles from the cabinet and glared at me.
Forget it. I've lost my appetite.
Throwing out those words, she stormed upstairs to her room, loudly stomping, carrying the cup of noodles with hot water, and completely abandoning the dinner I had made. When I told Thomas about it after he got home from work, he immediately scolded Emma. But even so, the same thing kept happening over and over.
She shows no gratitude to you for making her meals, Sarah. Maybe you should stop cooking for her for a while. If she complains, just tell her it was my decision.
Though Thomas said this, I felt bad thinking of her being hungry, so I couldn't bring myself to follow through. As Emma entered high school and her rebellious phase ended, her attitude only got worse. Smart and resourceful, she charmed her teachers and older students into helping her, getting tips on likely test questions and borrowing last year's notes to consistently stay at the top of her class. However, it seemed that pretending to be a model student stressed her out, and she vented all that frustration at home. Her obsession with money was especially troubling. She constantly begged me for pocket money to buy expensive makeup and clothes. I can't believe it. You've already spent the allowance I gave you 3 days ago? Well, you'll have to wait until next month. When I calmly told her this, Emma lost it.
$100 a month is way too little. Dad makes good money, so why is he so stingy? Oh, I get it. You're secretly using his money, aren't you?
Listen, the average allowance for high schoolers is $50. Since your school doesn't allow part-time jobs, I'm giving you twice that. Thomas's salary is being saved for your college tuition. You're planning to go to nursing school, right?
That's right. If I want to marry a doctor, becoming a nurse and meeting someone at work is the quickest route, isn't it? And once I'm married, I'll quit nursing and become a housewife like you.
Emma scoffed at me with a smirk.
Being a housewife must be such a cushy life. You just hang around the house all day and let your husband take care of you. Aren't you ashamed of yourself?
I frowned and replied, I've told you many times before. I work remotely as an illustrator because I'm not in the best health for commuting. I may not make as much as Thomas, but I earn part-time level income, and some of it goes toward your tuition. Her demeaning remarks were too much to bear, and I found myself snapping. And by the way, who do you think washes your uniform and makes your meals? Even if I were a full-time housewife, you have no right to look down on someone who does everything for you.
Oh, sure, playing on your computer all day. And don't act like making meals or doing laundry is some great accomplishment. That's what moms are supposed to do.
Emma sneered at me, her gaze full of disdain.
You're so annoying. Dad used to spoil me so much more before he remarried. Now he's stricter with me.
Is that so? Then it seems my presence in this house has been meaningful, I said with a smile. Emma glared at me, clearly irritated.
You're disgusting. Seeing you smile makes me want to throw up.
Her words cut deep. I know I'm not particularly attractive, but she didn't have to go that far.
Having an ugly hag like you as a stepmom is unbearable. If you weren't Dad's favorite, I'd have kicked you out long ago.
That's my line. The only reason I stayed in this house despite Emma's hostility was because Thomas cared about me and because Emma was his daughter. But no matter how much Thomas talked to her, Emma refused to change her ways, and my resentment toward her only grew stronger. Emma eventually got into nursing school without any issues. But even in academics, she used it as an opportunity to look down on me. Living in her college dorm, Emma would come home during holidays to see Thomas. Recently, she stopped bad-mouthing me in front of Thomas and started targeting me when we were alone.
You're just a high school graduate, right?
Emma stood with her arms crossed, watching me in the kitchen without offering to help with dinner. Her faint smile, combined with the malice on her otherwise beautiful face, diminished her charm significantly. That's right. My family wasn't wealthy, so I started working early to contribute to the household. I wanted to make life easier for my ailing parents, but they both passed away not long after I turned 18.
I don't care about that. Basically, you're saying you're poor and dumb, right? So you married Dad for his money.
That's not true. I fell for his personality, I replied, knowing full well she wouldn't listen.
Sure, and his looks are decent too. Honestly, Dad could have done way better, but he has such bad taste in women.
I ignored her as I did the dishes, but Emma puffed out her chest and declared,
If a high school graduate like you could marry Dad, then bagging a doctor will be even easier for me.
I stared at Emma, astonished. Hearing a college student say something so shallow, so confidently, was embarrassing for me. That kind of attitude doesn't suit someone working in healthcare. If I were a patient, I'd want a nurse who genuinely cared. I spoke calmly, trying to reason with her, but Emma wasn't interested.
Look who's talking. Someone as gorgeous as me brightens up the room just by being there. On the other hand, your face looks like it spreads misery. I honestly respect that you have the nerve to walk around outside looking like that.
The insults just kept coming. Engaging with her seemed pointless, so I chose to let her words wash over me. Lately, I found myself pitying Emma more than envying her beauty. She was born beautiful, but with her personality, trouble was bound to follow. Even if things went well at first, it wouldn't take long for her facade to crack, and she'd end up being alienated by those around her. Despite my concerns, Emma graduated college and became the nurse she always dreamed of being. She didn't move back home, choosing instead to live alone in a trendy apartment near the hospital. She seemed busy, only coming home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Emma kept in touch with Thomas, but didn't reach out to me at all. Thomas seemed a bit lonely with fewer chances to see his daughter, but I was relieved to finally enjoy some peace. One weekend, Thomas brought in the mail from the front porch and casually asked me as I read a book on the sofa.
By the way, Sarah, you've heard about the wedding, right?
Whose wedding? Thomas froze for a moment, then sighed deeply, covering his face with his hand.
I told her to tell you herself.
Confused, I looked at him as he grimaced and said,
Emma's. She's getting married in 2 months.
"Oh, I see. Wait, what?" I dropped my book in shock, quickly picking it up as I bombarded Thomas with questions. I had no idea. When did she get engaged? What about a meeting with his family?
I just found out last week over the phone. She said that the groom was a doctor's son, and his mom passed away a few years ago, so they seemingly decided to skip the family introductions. It was all after the fact.
Skipping not just the engagement ceremony, but even a family meeting? It felt so strange.
Instead, they're having a dinner at a restaurant after the wedding.
Oh, so that's when we'll meet them. I glanced at the wedding invitation Thomas was holding. The groom's name is Kevin Young. The invitation was addressed only to Thomas. A hollow feeling rose within me, and I laughed bitterly. Sending it just to Thomas feels like a deliberate snub. They never intended to invite me from the start. I said this with a hint of sarcasm, but Thomas quickly denied it.
They probably left your name off because it's obvious you'd come with me. Given the rocky relationship you've had so far, I bet Emma felt awkward and couldn't bring herself to tell you directly.
You think so? When I hesitantly asked, Thomas responded firmly.
Of course, it'd be ridiculous not to invite the mother. I think showing up as a surprise would make her happy.
Thomas's bright smile lifted my spirits a little. I pictured Emma in her wedding dress in my mind. She'd undoubtedly look stunning, like a princess. Even with our complicated relationship as her stepmother, I wanted to see her on her special day. Do you think this could be an opportunity to make our relationship better?
Even after everything she's done, you're willing to forgive her? Sarah, you're truly kind.
Thomas looked touched, and I explained shyly. She was just jealous during her teenage years, seeing her dad taken away by a stranger. She's your daughter, so I'd like to get along with her.
Thank you. That means a lot. Then it's settled. Let's go together.
You're sure it's okay for me to attend?
Of course. You're her mother.
With Thomas's encouraging smile, I decided to attend the wedding. I took out the black dress I had worn to Thomas's niece's wedding. The thought of wearing it as a mother now filled me with deep emotion. Hoping this event might finally dissolve years of tension and allow us to talk like normal family members. I felt a flicker of hope as the wedding day arrived.
She might be stubborn if I'm around. You two should have some time alone. It might make her more open.
That made sense, so I left Thomas in the lobby of the wedding venue and headed to the bride's waiting room by myself. I knocked on the door nervously, and Emma's voice responded. It had been a while since I'd heard her voice, still as lovely as a bell ringing. When I opened the door, there she stood before the mirror in an elegant, pure white dress. With slightly bold makeup, she looked even more radiant. She's like a model, I thought, mesmerized, until her curt voice brought me back to reality.
What are you doing here?
Her glare was as if she were looking at something repulsive, and her voice carried unmistakable anger. So, I shouldn't have come after all. I felt the excitement in my heart rapidly cool. Of course, I'm here to celebrate your big day, I said, reminding myself it was a happy occasion and forcing a smile. Emma, however, spat her words like venom.
I told you not to come uninvited. How bold of you. That's exactly why I only addressed the invitation to Dad.
I could feel my face stiffen. When Emma said it so bluntly, I had no choice but to feel hurt.
Look, you're not supposed to exist in my story.
What?
My narrative is that my parents divorced when I was a kid, and I was raised by my dad alone. You showing up messes everything up.
Sadness and anger welled up inside me. So you lied to your fiancé and his family? Why are you so determined to keep me away? I managed to ask while trying to suppress my emotions. Emma's malicious smile grew wider.
You really don't know why? Fine, let me spell it out for you.
She laughed coldly, glaring at me.
I can't possibly admit that someone like you is my mom. Ugly, stupid, and just a parasite clinging to Dad. Do you even have any value as a human being?
Emma twisted her crimson lips into a sneer, seemingly relishing my stunned reaction as she spat her cruel words.
You're not needed in my life. You're a disgrace to our family, so stay out of it forever, okay?
I felt my entire body burn with rage. For 10 years, I had tried my best to build a good relationship, but it had all been for nothing. Fine, I replied curtly and quickly left the waiting room. When I returned to the lobby, Thomas's face paled as soon as he saw me. He seemed to understand the situation immediately.
Sarah.
She told me not to come, so I'm going home. Please give my regards to the groom's family.
Got it. I'm sorry.
As Thomas lowered his voice apologetically, I waved one hand to signal, "Don't worry about it," and walked out of the venue's entrance. Even after I got home, I couldn't shake my anger. Standing in the entryway in my formal dress, I picked up my phone and carried out a plan I had been contemplating for some time. I had hesitated before, but now I saw no reason to hold back. Thomas would understand, I was sure. After finishing that, I felt a little lighter, so I changed into comfortable clothes and brewed some tea. I hadn't had the chance to enjoy a quiet morning tea today. Since my schedule was now clear for the day, I decided to relax. An hour passed after I got home. I was sitting on the sofa, enjoying a mystery novel, when my phone started ringing in the next room. I had purposely left it there, as I find calls and doorbells interrupting my reading to be quite irritating. The caller was Emma. I had a pretty good idea of why she was calling, so I decided to ignore it for now. I'm busy right now, I muttered, diving back into the world of my book. But the phone kept ringing persistently. Each call lasted until the voicemail picked up. Then she would call again immediately. This pattern repeated for 30 minutes, and I finally gave in, annoyed, and picked up the phone reluctantly. Hello.
Come back to the venue right now.
A weak voice reached my ears. I could hear sniffles. She was crying. Emma pleaded with me in a pitiful tone.
Dad was furious with me, and I heard you know Kevin, the groom?
Yes, that's correct, I answered calmly, and Emma raised her voice.
Why didn't you tell me earlier?
Why would I? Someone who only invites my husband doesn't deserve to know. When I snapped back, Emma faltered.
Anyway, if this keeps up, the wedding can't start. Please, I'm begging you, come back.
Well, I guess I have no choice. Fine, I'll come. After hanging up the phone, I smirked to myself. She clearly didn't think this through. If she calls me back now, things are bound to get messy. As I slipped back into my black dress, I mentally declared war on Emma. She has no idea what she's in for after making me this angry. When I arrived at the wedding venue and stood outside the bride's waiting room, I froze. I could hear Emma and Thomas arguing loudly. It carried all the way into the hallway. I knocked, but the shouting drowned out the sound, so I quietly opened the door and stepped inside. Both Emma and Thomas were flushed, glaring at each other with intense expressions.
Dad, why did you call her here without telling me? Stay out of my business. The story is that my mom passed away after a long illness and that you raised me alone.
Sarah is your mother. Of course, she should be at your wedding.
Thomas, uncharacteristically furious, fired back at Emma, who was hysterical. In the 10 years I'd known him, I'd never seen him this angry.
I've always wondered, why do you hate Sarah so much? For the past 10 years, she's cared for you like a mother. It's ridiculous how distant you are.
Emma let out a mocking laugh.
Isn't it obvious? She's an ugly, uneducated old hag.
What did you just say?
Thomas looked appalled, but Emma continued her tirade, her words spilling out quickly.
It's your fault for marrying someone like that. An ugly friend would be fine because it'd make me look better, but a mother? She needs to be beautiful, or people will think I'm as low class as she is. And on top of that, she's just a high school graduate. How pathetic.
Thomas frowned deeply. his voice tense as he replied. She couldn't attend college because of her family circumstances, but Sarah's high school was one of the top schools in the country. It's ranked higher than the one you went to. Emma's eyes widened in shock, her body stiffening. Ah, so she didn't know. For the record, I only applied to that school because it was within biking distance. It just happened to be the hardest one in the state. On the other hand, Emma's high school was middle tier. Clearly rattled, Emma tried to recover.
Well, so what? She's still just a high school graduate, isn't she? Kevin's entire family, his dad, his relatives, they all went to prestigious universities or graduate schools.
Emma leaned back arrogantly, lifting her chin with a proud expression, as if she were basking in her own glory. Why does she look so smug? She's not even involved.
Dad, you graduated from a state university, so at least you can hold your own. But having a mom who's just a high school graduate? That's embarrassing. It tarnishes my credentials too.
Even Thomas seemed beyond angry. He just looked utterly exasperated. Covering his face with one hand, he spoke in a tired voice.
Who do you think you are? You're just an average graduate from a nursing school.
Oh, I'm allowed to be average because I'm cute. Besides, look, Kevin chose me, didn't he?
Emma declared confidently, her radiant smile full of self-assurance. Admittedly, from someone as plain-looking as me, she is stunning. I remember when Thomas, Emma, and I walked through a busy shopping district years ago, and talent scouts approached her repeatedly. But thinking looks are everything is clearly misguided. People who are shallow and arrogant quickly lose their appeal and are eventually pushed out of the spotlight.
You keep bragging about snagging a doctor, but the truth will come out soon enough. Marrying someone for their credentials is disrespectful to them.
Thomas snapped, glancing toward the door, and that's when he noticed me standing there. His expression turned awkward while Emma glared at me, her face twisting into a sneer.
A black dress? Guess it doesn't suit everyone, does it?
Emma, don't listen to her, Sarah. You look lovely.
Thomas immediately scolded his daughter and tried to console me, but I smiled gently. It's fine. I'm not hurt by her words anymore. By the way, are the groom and his father waiting in the groom's room? As I asked, Emma strode up to me angrily, practically snarling.
If you knew him, why didn't you tell me from the start? I would have introduced you properly. Now I look like a liar because of you. Take responsibility.
Emma glared at me, her eyes narrowing sharply as she launched into a furious tirade. Her absurd accusations were so over the top, they gave me a headache. Taking a deep breath, I responded as calmly as I could. Don't be ridiculous. I only found out you were getting married when Thomas told me.
You realized it when you saw Kevin's name on the invitation, didn't you? The moment you figured it out, you should have contacted me.
Her spiteful tone and the way she blamed me were crude and overbearing. It completely ruined the elegance of her wedding dress. When I stayed silent, she seemed to mistake it for submission and doubled down.
You wanted to embarrass me in front of Kevin, didn't you? You pretend to be a mother, but you're the worst. Ugly and mean, a total loser.
Enough.
Thomas, clearly at his limit, interjected. At that moment, the door burst open, and Kevin and his father, Jay, strode in. The sight of Kevin brought a flood of memories from over 20 years ago. In his silver tuxedo, he looked every bit as polished as he had as a boy. Jay, dressed in formal morning wear, carried himself with the dignified presence of the director of a major hospital. Though older and more robust, the gentle expression in his eyes remained the same. Kevin looked directly at Emma and raised his voice.
Stop speaking badly about Sarah.
Kevin, you were listening outside? I told you Mom was running late and you said you'd need at least another hour to get ready, so wait in the groom's room.
Ah, so that's the excuse she used. But if they overheard the entire argument, her excuse would fall apart. Ignoring Emma's attempts to explain herself, Jay began speaking politely.
One of the staff came to let us know it was time to prepare for the ceremony. They said they knocked, but with all the shouting, there was no response. So we decided to come ourselves.
Then he turned to me, softening his expression.
Ah, it really is Sarah. Thank you for your help back then.
Thomas glanced between Kevin, Jay, and me, piecing things together.
Sarah, is this Kevin the boy you helped years ago on the street?
Yes, though helped is a bit much. All I did was call an ambulance. As I modestly downplayed it, Jay shook his head.
No, you performed CPR. Thanks to you, Kevin survived and is now a doctor.
Next to him, Kevin gave me a warm smile.
That's right. You visited me in the hospital every day, and it gave me the strength to get through my heart surgery. Sarah, you're literally my lifesaver.
When I glanced at Emma, she wore a sour expression, clearly displeased. Kevin's recovery was thanks to his strong will and good luck. Helping a child who collapses on the street is just basic duty, right? Don't you agree, Emma, as a nurse? Suddenly addressed, Emma widened her eyes before forcing a strained smile.
Yes, of course, that's exactly right, Mother.
Her awkward delivery made it obvious how unused she was to calling me that.
But it's strange. I thought your mother passed away from cancer when you were a child. And just earlier, I overheard Thomas saying, "Invite Sarah. She's your mother." It left me confused.
Emma stammered, trying to cover her tracks.
I told you, I got into a fight with my mom and said I wouldn't invite her to the wedding. That's all.
No, that doesn't add up. When we met at the doctor-nurse mixer, you told me you were raised in a single-parent household.
Jay, arms crossed, nodded deeply.
You even mentioned how, while taking care of household chores, you often stayed by your mother's side in the hospital. You said that experience inspired you to become a nurse.
I couldn't help but chuckle, and Thomas, holding back laughter, commented dryly.
To her credit, my daughter had the determination to study seriously and become a nurse just to marry a rich doctor. That focus is impressive, if nothing else.
Indeed, getting this far, even with ulterior motives, is quite an achievement. I added mockingly. Emma clenched her fists, trembling with anger. She opened her mouth to retort, but quickly shut it again, likely remembering that Kevin and Jay were present.
Are you two trying to ruin my wedding? Are you even my parents?
Emma glared at us furiously. but I calmly replied, "Thomas aside, you've never considered me your parent, have you? Old hag, ugly, parasite living off Dad. I remember all the insults you threw at me. Oh, I see now. You didn't want me here because you were afraid I'd reveal all that." I smirked, and Emma turned bright red, her anger visible up to her neck. Kevin let out a long sigh, his exhaustion evident.
Emma, I can't trust you anymore. Dad, can we put the wedding on hold?
Yes, that's probably for the best. Wait,
Suddenly, noise erupted outside the room. Kevin and Jay exchanged glances.
are the guests arriving already?
No, there should still be time before the ceremony.
Overlapping with their voices, the staff in the hallway could be heard trying to stop someone. "Please wait. Preparations are still underway." Before the conversation could end, the door burst open, and a group of young men stormed in. As soon as they saw Emma, they advanced on her with furious expressions.
Hey, is it true you're getting married? This isn't what you told us.
You made me spend over $10,000 on designer bags and jewelry, and it was all just a game to you?
Kevin, watching the scene, murmured under his breath.
Those are the guys from a mixer we had before. An internist, an orthopedic surgeon, a gynecologist, and an ophthalmologist. Did you snoop through my phone to contact them, Emma?
The men cornered Emma, who was still in her wedding dress, forcing her against the wall with their angry shouts.
You told me you'd marry me once I became an independent doctor. I worked my butt off for that. And now, you choose some rich second-generation guy instead? How dare you use us?
Emma kept her head down, her lips pressed tightly together, enduring their accusations in silence. But after a moment, she raised her face with a fierce expression. She covered her ears with her hands, shut her eyes, and screamed in a high-pitched voice.
Shut up. Just shut up.
The room instantly fell silent. Emma glared at the men, her tone defiant and brazen.
Used you? Ha! A low-paid hired doctor thinking you're worthy of marrying me? How ridiculous! You should be thanking me for even entertaining you, a beauty like me.
Then she turned her sharp gaze to me and launched into a heated accusation.
This is all your fault, isn't it? You snooped through my phone, didn't you? What kind of mother does that? You're insane.
Calmly meeting her piercing glare, I replied, "When you came home for the holidays, you left your phone on the sofa. I happened to see a message pop up from one of the men as I passed by. At first, I didn't think anything. But the next day, and the day after that, I noticed conversations where you arranged dates with different people. After everything you've put me through, I thought it might be useful later, so I took screenshots."
So you stalked their social media and contacted them? You're a terrible mother, a complete monster.
Ignoring her outburst, I smiled and explained, "I'm sorry, but you see, I couldn't just stand by and let Kevin, someone I happened to save once, get hurt because of your lies."
Oh, sure, ruin your daughter's wedding for your own satisfaction. Bet you're real proud of yourself.
Before I could respond, Kevin stepped forward, his expression cold and severe.
Sarah saved my life, and now she saved me again from marrying someone as deceitful and arrogant as you. This wedding is off. I'll be sending the bill for the venue cancellation and the breach of promise compensation through my lawyer.
Kevin, wait,
Emma looked at him pleadingly, but Kevin's voice remained icy.
Save your excuses. After today, we won't be seeing each other again.
Jay opened the waiting room door and gestured for Emma to leave.
We'll handle the guests. You're free to go.
With the room's cold stares and Jay's dismissive tone, even Emma seemed to feel out of place. She left the room with the help of staff to change into casual clothes and walked out of the venue with a scowl. While Thomas and I stayed behind to apologize and explain things to the staff, guests started to arrive. On our side, it was just Thomas and me, but Kevin had relatives and colleagues from the hospital there. As Kevin and Jay apologized deeply to the attendees, returning their wedding gifts and distributing wedding favors, my guilt deepened. After the guests had dispersed, Thomas and I apologized deeply to Kevin and Jay. We deeply apologize for the trouble our daughter caused.
We'll make sure to pay the compensation, so please don't hesitate to send us the claim.
Understood.
Kevin nodded with a serious expression, then softened his gaze as he looked at me.
I know this isn't the best moment, but I'm really happy to meet the person who saved my life.
Oh, I also feel that way. From time to time, I'd wonder how you were doing and talk about you with Kevin.
Jay also gave me a gentle smile.
Though it didn't work out with Emma, I hope we can stay connected with you both in the future.
Thomas and I exchanged surprised looks. Are you sure?
Thank you so much. We'd be delighted to keep in touch.
Still a little taken aback, Thomas and I expressed our gratitude. And so, the four of us parted ways on a friendly note. Emma received an invoice from the wedding venue for the cancellation fee. She had planned an extravagant and romantic ceremony with only 30 guests, yet it cost a staggering $50,000. Most of it had been paid by Thomas and Jay in an astonishing display of entitlement. Now that the wedding was called off, Emma was required to cover the entire amount herself. Additionally, since she had maintained relationships with multiple men before her engagement, she was ordered to pay Kevin $20,000 in emotional damages. Having spent nearly all her savings on the wedding, Emma was left with almost nothing. She ended up borrowing money from various sources to pay the cancellation fees and damages. Afterward, she continued working at Jay's hospital, but word about why her engagement to Kevin fell apart spread quickly among her coworkers. The gossip, mostly shared by other nurses, caused her to become an outcast. Even someone as brazen as Emma found it unbearable, and she eventually transferred to another hospital. But her troubles didn't end there. The teacher named Emma Owen became infamous among nurses and doctors, accompanied by embellished rumors. After transferring to 3 different hospitals and facing the same treatment each time, she finally quit nursing. I've heard that she's now distrustful of people and lives quietly, juggling part-time jobs while paying off her debts. After the wedding, Thomas told me that Emma had repeatedly asked him for money. However, he firmly turned her down, knowing that indulging her would only worsen things.
I spoiled her too much as a child because her mom wasn't around, but she's 25 now. It's time for her to grow up.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I doubt that her arrogant and dismissive attitude toward others will change anytime soon, but I hope this experience has taught her a lesson. As much as I sympathize with Thomas, I've decided I want nothing more to do with Emma. The past 10 years were filled with hardship because of her. However, I'm truly glad to have reconnected with Kevin, whom I'd known over 20 years ago, and to have formed a bond with him and Jay. Even though the wedding didn't happen, Thomas and I now meet with Kevin and Jay several times a year to share meals and catch up.
As a doctor, I'm still just a beginner, but I hope to improve quickly so I can help as many sick children as possible.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. Keep up the great work. Sitting across from Kevin at a restaurant, I smiled warmly as he spoke about his dreams with a radiant expression. I had tried my best to raise Emma with love, but I failed. Parenting is hard. From now on, I hope to spend my days happily with Thomas, just the two of us.